A poor little girl walks into a restaurant, holding her malnourished little brother in her arms. She looks at the billionaire CEO and says, "Just a little bit of leftover. He hasn't eaten in a day, please." What he does next makes everyone cry. The Lumiere restaurant glowed like a jewel in the cold night. Through its glass windows, one could see tables draped in white cloths, crystal glasses reflecting the gentle light of chandeliers, and elegant people savoring expensive dishes. Victor Hale sat at a corner table, alone as always. His impeccable dark suit contrasted with the emptiness in his expression. It was exactly 1 year. 1 year since the accident that took his wife and daughter. 1 year living like a shadow. The maitre d' poured more red wine into his glass. "Anything else, Mr. Hale?" Victor merely shook his head, not bothering to look up. The movement at the entrance door didn't catch his attention. That was when the polite silence of the Lumiere was broken. Small steps, hesitant yet determined, crossed the dining room. A little girl walked among the tables, carrying an even smaller boy in her arms. The customers turned their heads, some in surprise, others in discomfort. Leah moved forward, her gaze fixed on her goal. Her brown hair was disheveled, and her clothes were far too big for her fragile body. She carried her younger brother Noah with visible effort, though she showed no intention of putting him down. "Miss, you can't be in here." The maitre d' approached quickly, blocking her path with a tense smile. Leah slipped past him as if he were just another obstacle, continuing in a straight line. Her large, sunken eyes were locked on a single table, the one where Victor Hale dined alone. Sophia, the owner of the Lumiere, stepped out of the kitchen upon noticing the commotion. She was a middle-aged woman with keen eyes that missed nothing. She looked ready to intervene, but something stopped her. There was determination in that child, and Sophia decided to watch. Leah finally reached Victor's table. He still hadn't noticed her presence, lost in his own dark thoughts, until the small shadow was cast over the white tablecloth. Victor looked up and froze. The girl stood there, staring directly at him. Her sunken eyes held a mixture of fragility and strength, and the boy in her arms seemed almost asleep, his head resting on his sister's shoulder. What shocked Victor most was not their sudden appearance, but their condition. Even under the restaurant's soft light, it was impossible not to notice. Their pale skin, the protruding bones in their wrists and faces, the clothes that seemed borrowed, far too large for bodies that had shrunk. And that gaze, a gaze of someone who had grown up far too quickly. For a moment, no one moved. The other customers, the maitre d', Sophia, everyone seemed petrified, as if witnessing a scene from another world intruding upon their own. Then, with a clear voice that did not match her frail appearance, Leah spoke. "Just a little bit. He hasn't eaten anything for a day, please." There was no pleading in her voice. It was almost a demand, as though she were merely stating a fact Victor needed to address. Victor Hale was known in town for his impassive expression ever since the tragedy. The man who never smiled again, the widower who plunged into work and shut himself off from the world, the father who lost his daughter and, with her, any trace of emotion. But in that moment, something happened on his face, an almost imperceptible tremor. He looked at Leah, then at Noah in her arms, and back at the plate in front of him, a pricey entree he had barely touched. The maitre d' at last reacted, approaching with determined steps. "Mr. Hale, I apologize. I'll call security and—" "Bring them food," Victor interrupted, his voice rough from lack of use. "For both of them." His voice echoed across the silent restaurant. The maitre d' froze in place. A lady at a nearby table brought her hand to her mouth, tears brimming in her eyes. A passing waiter stopped, blinking quickly to hold back his own emotion. "You heard me," Victor continued, now looking directly at the man. "Bring food. For both of them." Sophia, who had been watching everything from the kitchen doorway, stepped forward. Her own eyes shining with tears she fought to contain. "Marcel, bring the full children's dinner. 2 plates." Her gaze crossed Victor's for a brief moment, a silent understanding between them. Victor gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Sit." Leah did not say thank you. She did not smile. She simply sat down carefully, arranging Noah in her lap. Her movements were precise, like someone used to caring for another. The silence that followed was broken only by discreet sniffles. A businessman at a table in the corner turned his face away, quietly wiping away a tear. The pianist on the small stage tried to resume playing but found his fingers trembling over the keys. Within minutes, Marcel returned with 2 plates, creamy soup, shredded chicken with mashed potatoes, cooked vegetables, simple but nutritious food. Sophia accompanied him, bringing a small glass of juice and another of milk. Leah looked at the food, then at Victor, as if expecting instructions or conditions. He merely made a gesture with his hand, indicating they could eat. What happened next moved something deep inside Victor Hale, something he believed had died long ago. Leah did not start eating. Instead, with a near reverential care, she picked up a small spoon and began feeding her brother. She blew on each spoonful to cool it, tested the temperature with her lip, and then offered it to Noah. Her little hands trembled slightly, but her movements were steady. A young waitress leaned against the wall, crying silently. The head chef, a burly man known for his short temper, appeared in the doorway and removed his hat as a gesture of respect. "You can eat too," Victor said, his own voice sounding strange to his ears. Leah raised her eyes to him for a moment. "He's worse off." 3 simple words, loaded with an entire universe of meaning. He's worse off. A statement from someone who had taken on more responsibility than her age warranted. Someone who had learned to prioritize another's need over her own hunger. A tear slid down Victor's face, the first since the funeral. He didn't wipe it away, perhaps he didn't even notice. At the adjacent table, an elderly couple held hands, watching with tearful eyes. Sophia remained a few steps away, observing. Her perceptive gaze noticed the shift in Victor. It wasn't obvious, just a different light in his eyes, a slight tremor in his strong hands, a tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. Something was happening to that man who had shut himself away from the world. When Noah finally seemed satisfied, leaning against his sister's chest with sleepy eyes, Leah began to eat her own portion. She ate slowly, chewing carefully, as though savoring each small bite. Yet her eyes remained alert, surveying the room, always returning to Victor, as if evaluating whether this offer might be withdrawn at any moment. The restaurant maintained a reverent silence. No one dared speak loudly, as though they were witnessing something sacred. The pianist finally found the right notes, gentle music, almost a lullaby. Victor watched the children, and something dormant awakened within him, memories he had tried his best to bury, the row of tiny shoes in the closet, the sound of laughter echoing through the house, the feel of a small hand in his. "Where did you come from?" he asked softly, so as not to startle them. Leah finished chewing before answering. "From out there," she said vaguely, pointing to the window, to the darkness beyond the restaurant's warm glow. "Where are your parents?" A brief tremor flickered across her face, so quick it almost went unnoticed. "My mum's sick in the big hospital. And your dad? Never met him." There was a brutal simplicity in her words. No drama, no self-pity. Just facts stated as they were. Victor gave a slight nod. "How did you know who I was?" Leah took a sip of juice before answering. "Everyone knows Mr. Hale." It was true. Victor Hale was well known in the city. The successful businessman who lost everything he cared about on a stormy night when a drunk driver ran a red light. The man who buried his wife and daughter on the same day and was never seen smiling again. "Why did you come to me?" The question that really mattered. Leah's large, solemn eyes remained on his. "You help kids. I saw it on the big sign. You give money to help kids. The Hale Foundation, created after his family's death, managed by his assistants. A way to channel his wealth for some good, while he distanced himself from everything and everyone. A duty he fulfilled without personal involvement." Victor felt a knot in his throat. The irony did not escape him. He donated millions to children he would never meet, while these two had had to come into a luxury restaurant just to get a meal. Sophia approached again, bringing a small dessert, vanilla pudding with a berry sauce. She placed it before the children with a gentle smile. I thought you might like to try this. It's our specialty. Noah, who seemed almost asleep, opened his eyes at the sight of the colorful dessert. For the first time, Victor saw something on the boy's face other than exhaustion, a flicker of childlike delight. Leah looked at Sophia with a mix of suspicion and gratitude. Thank you, Mom. Sophia, the woman corrected softly. My name is Sophia. For an instant, something like a smile passed across Leah's lips, as fleeting as light reflecting on a mirror. While the children shared the dessert, Leah once more offering the first spoonfuls to Noah, Victor and Sophia exchanged a meaningful look. May I speak with you for a moment? Sophia asked quietly. Victor hesitated, looking at the children. Just over there, Sophia gestured toward a spot near the bar, still within view of the table. They'll be fine. Victor nodded and followed Sophia, keeping the children in his sight. What are you going to do with them afterward? Sophia asked bluntly, once they were out of earshot. The question caught Victor off guard. He hadn't thought beyond the immediate moment. I don't know. Sophia studied his face for a long moment. You can't just feed them and send them away, Victor. I know, and he did know. Something had changed in the past few minutes, something he couldn't even explain to himself. These children need help. Real help, Sophia went on. Look at them. They're malnourished, probably homeless, their mother hospitalized. If you called social services right now... No, Victor interrupted, surprising both of them with the sudden firmness in his voice. Not yet. Sophia raised an eyebrow, assessing him. Then what? Victor looked back at the table, where Leah was gently wiping Noah's face with a napkin after they finished the dessert. I need to think. Sophia placed a hand on his arm, the first human touch Victor had received in months. Victor, I know you're feeling something right now, something you haven't felt in a long time, but these are real children, with real needs. Not symbols or projects. Her words hit Victor like a slap. Sophia was right, of course. What was he doing? What was he feeling? He could barely take care of himself for the past year. How could he... I'm going to help them, he said at last. I don't know how yet, but I will, properly. Sophia nodded, looking relieved. You have my number. Use it. When Victor returned to the table, Noah was asleep in Leah's lap, and the girl was fighting her own fatigue. Her heavy eyes opened fully at his approach. Thank you for the food, she said formally, as if she had rehearsed the phrase. Victor sat down, studying them both. Where will you go now, Leah? The girl adjusted her brother in her arms, preparing to stand. We have a place. The lie was transparent. Leah, Victor said gently, in a tone he had not used in a long time. It's cold outside, and your brother is sleeping. Let me help you. Really. Something flickered across her face. Fear, hope, distrust, all at once. They'll separate us. Grown-ups always separate us. Victor felt those words like a punch to the stomach. The bitter wisdom of a child's experience. I won't let that happen, he promised, not entirely sure how he would keep it. You can stay with me tonight. I have a spare room. Tomorrow, we'll figure out what to do. Leah studied him with eyes that seemed to see more than was on the surface. Finally, she nodded, almost imperceptibly. Just for tonight, she agreed. And we're not going to be separated. You won't be, Victor assured her, standing up and offering his hand to help. As they left the restaurant, Victor carrying a sleeping Noah, Leah walking by his side with cautious steps. A respectful silence followed them. The maitre d', who had been so concerned about the children's presence, now held the door open with renewed dignity. The customers looked on, many with teary eyes. Sophia watched from the doorway. She saw the broken man who dined alone every night now leaving with purpose, guiding a small child while carrying another in his arms. It wasn't salvation, it wasn't redemption, it was just a moment of human connection. But for Victor Hale, on that cold night, it was the first step out of the emptiness his life had become. Victor closed the door of his silent, empty house. The echo of his footsteps on the marble entryway seemed louder tonight, as though the house itself was surprised by his early return. Usually, he wandered the city until late, avoiding coming back to the place that used to be a home, and was now just somewhere to pass the dark hours. He set his keys on the hall table, the metallic sound reverberating through the walls. He turned on only one lamp, as he always did. The dimness had been his constant companion since the accident. The Hale mansion was impeccably clean. The housekeeping staff came 3 times a week, but there was an air of abandonment that no cleaning product could hide. It was the abandonment of a place that was no longer lived in, merely occupied. Victor climbed the stairs slowly, the steps creaking beneath his feet. In the upstairs hallway, he paused briefly in front of a closed door. He always stopped there, always hesitated, and always moved on without opening it. Olivia's room had remained untouched since the accident, a sanctuary he lacked the courage to visit. In his own bedroom, Victor did not turn on the lights. He took off his jacket, his tie, his shoes. He sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the photo on the bedside table, Eliza and Olivia smiling on a picnic day, the last summer they spent together. "How was your day?" he asked the silence, a ritual he maintained despite knowing there would be no answer. But this time he had something different to share with the silence. "I met 2 children today," he said softly, gazing at the photo. They walked into the restaurant. The girl was carrying her younger brother in her arms. His voice broke as he remembered Leah's eyes, so ancient in such a young face. They were starving, Eliza, and alone. Victor rarely allowed himself to feel. After the accident, the pain had been so overwhelming that he learned to exist in an emotionally numb state. It was safer that way. But something had torn down that barrier today. The image of Leah feeding her brother before eating, her small act of sacrifice, had awakened an echo of humanity within him. He lay down without changing clothes, staring at the ceiling. Sleep would not come easily, as usual, but when it finally did, it brought something Victor both feared and longed for in equal measure: dreams. In the dream, he walked through an open field beneath an impossibly blue sky. The air had that special quality of dreams, more vivid than reality, colors brighter, sensations sharper. In the distance, he saw a small figure running among wildflowers. His heart almost stopped when he recognized the yellow dress, the braids bouncing with each step. "Olivia," he called, his voice choking with emotion. The girl stopped and turned around, his daughter's face just as he remembered, as though the accident had never happened. Her eyes, identical to Eliza's, shone with childish joy. "Daddy!" She waved but did not run to him. Victor began running to reach her, but the distance between them never shrank. It was like running on a treadmill moving in the opposite direction. No matter how much he tried, he could not catch up. "Olivia, wait," he pleaded. She smiled, not the mischievous grin he remembered, but one older, wiser than her years. "It's okay, Daddy," she said, her voice ringing clear as a bell. "You don't need to catch me." Victor stopped, confused. "I don't understand." "You stayed still for too long," Olivia continued. "It's time to move forward again." "I can't," he replied, the pain in his voice palpable even in the dream. "Not without you. Without both of you." Olivia tilted her head, studying her father with an expression that mixed compassion and determination. An expression that Victor realized with a start greatly resembled Leah's in the restaurant. "Some people need you now," she said simply, "just like I needed you once." Before Victor could respond, he woke up with a jolt. The room was dark and silent. The digital clock on the nightstand read 3:27 a.m. His face was wet with tears, the first he had shed in months. It was the first time he had dreamed of Olivia since the accident, the first time he had heard her voice, even if only in a dream. Victor sat up in bed, his heart still racing. The feeling of the dream lingered, not just the image of Olivia, but her words. "Some people need you now." He got up, went to the window, and drew back the curtain. The city slept under a cloudy sky, with a few lights still shining here and there. Somewhere out there, 2 small children were probably trembling in the cold. When the first ray of sun broke through the clouds, Victor was already dressed. He had spent the remaining hours of the night thinking, remembering, feeling. For the first time in a year, allowing himself to feel entirely. He picked up the phone and dialed a number. Sophia, it's Victor. Sorry to call so early. Sophia's sleepy voice came from the other end of the line. Victor, did something happen? I need your help, he said simply. Help me find that girl. There was a moment of silence. Then Sophia answered firmly, I'll be at the restaurant in 20 minutes. Lumiere was empty at that hour, the chairs still inverted on the tables. Sophia waited at the entrance, wearing a thick coat against the morning chill. Her eyes studied Victor's face as he approached. You look different, she remarked. Victor didn't respond directly. Do you have any idea where they might be? Sophia nodded. I have some guesses. Children in that situation tend to stay near places where they can find food or temporary shelter. There's a shelter a few blocks away, but... She hesitated. But what? They separate siblings by age and gender. The girl mentioned she doesn't want to be separated from her brother. Victor felt a chill. He's worse off. Leah's words echoed in his mind. Where else? He asked. There's a park near the public market. Some homeless folks stay around there. And also... Sophia bit her lip, hesitant. Tell me. The commercial district has stores with deep awnings. They offer some shelter from the rain and wind. Victor nodded. We'll start with the park, then the awnings. Sophia placed her hand on his arm, stopping him. Victor, what do you plan to do when you find them? The question caught him unprepared, though it was obvious. What was his plan, really? He hadn't formed a concrete one. He only knew he needed to find them. I'm not entirely sure, he admitted, but I can't leave them on the street. The park was almost empty except for a few early workers passing through. There was no sign of the children. Victor felt his anxiety grow with every minute that passed. What if someone found them before us? He asked as they returned to the car. What if they were taken to a shelter overnight? We keep looking, Sophia replied, her calm demeanor grounding Victor's rising agitation. The commercial district was starting to come to life. Store employees raised their shutters, street sweepers cleaned the sidewalks. Sophia and Victor walked slowly, checking every sheltered nook and cranny where two small children might hide. Sophia spotted them first. Over there, she said quietly, pointing to a department store still closed for the morning. Its deep awning created a small space sheltered from the wind. Victor's heart pounded as he saw the tiny shape in the far corner of the entrance. It would be easy to pass by without noticing, just a dark shape, easily mistaken for trash bags or discarded boxes. They approached quietly so as not to startle them. The scene they found broke what was left of Victor's heart. Leah and Noah slept curled under a thin, worn blanket. The girl was on the outside, her small body protectively curved around her brother. A worn backpack served as a pillow for them both. Even in sleep, Leah's face held a watchful expression, as though part of her remained on guard. Victor crouched down slowly in front of them. The gentle movement was enough to wake Leah, whose eyes opened instantly, alert and ready to defend her brother. Recognition came a second later. "Mr. Hale," she murmured, her voice hoarse with sleep and cold. "Hello, Leah," Victor replied softly. "We've been looking for you." The girl sat up, automatically adjusting the blanket around her still sleeping brother. Her eyes moved from Victor to Sophia, assessing the situation with a caution beyond her years. "Why?" she asked simply. The question struck Victor like a blow. Why? Indeed. Why was a man who had isolated himself from the world for a year suddenly concerned about the fate of two children he barely knew? "Because no one should sleep like this," he answered, gesturing to the awning, the thin blanket, the cold ground. "Especially children." Leah didn't look convinced. Her eyes remained guarded. "Where's your mother?" Victor asked, trying a different angle. A flash of pain crossed the girl's face. "She got sick. The ambulance took her. She never came back." The brutal simplicity of that statement made Sophia emit a soft sound, somewhere between a sigh and a muffled sob. "How long has it been?" Victor asked gently. Leah shrugged. "A lot of days. I lost count." Noah began stirring under the blanket, mumbling in his sleep. Leah instantly focused on him, adjusting the blanket and whispering reassuring words. Victor exchanged a glance with Sophia. A decision was being made in that moment, without words. "Leah, he said, moving closer on his knees to be at her level. "We'd like to help you." "How?" The mistrust in her voice was palpable. "First, by offering you a warm place to stay. Food, a real bed." Leah's eyes narrowed. "And then, you'll call the people who separate siblings." Victor felt his heart clench at those words, her experience or fear speaking through a small child's voice. "No," he promised. "I won't let anyone separate you." "How can I trust you?" Leah asked, speaking quietly to avoid waking Noah. Victor paused, thinking, how indeed could she trust him, a stranger who suddenly appeared offering help? "You can't," he finally admitted. "Not yet. But I'm asking you to give me a chance to prove I deserve your trust." Leah considered his words, her small face too serious for her age. She looked at her sleeping brother, then at the sky that threatened rain. "Can we stay together?" she asked, and there was something so vulnerable in her voice that Victor felt his eyes sting. "Always," he replied, and in that moment, he realized it was a promise he intended to keep, no matter what it required. Something in Leah's face relaxed, not completely, but enough. She nodded once. "I'll wake Noah," she said, already moving to do so. Sophia stepped forward. "Let me get your things." There was only the worn backpack and the blanket. Sophia gathered them while Victor watched Leah gently wake her brother, explaining quietly that they were going somewhere warm. Noah opened his eyes, confused at first, then smiled upon recognizing Victor. "The food man," he mumbled sleepily, making Victor smile for the first time in a long while. "Yes, that's me. Would you like to have breakfast with me and Sophia?" Noah nodded enthusiastically, now more awake. Leah helped him stand, smoothing out his rumpled clothes with maternal gestures that were both touching and profoundly wrong for someone so young. As they headed to Victor's car, Noah fully awake now, chattering about pancakes, Leah still cautious and alert, Sophia leaned in and murmured, "Are you sure about this?" Victor watched the children for a moment. "I am." In the car, Noah fell asleep again, lulled by the warmth and movement. Leah remained alert, gazing out the window, occasionally glancing at Victor and Sophia in the front seat. "Shall we stop for breakfast?" Sophia asked. Victor looked in the rearview mirror and met Leah's tired eyes. "What do you think, Leah? Want to grab breakfast at a cafe or go straight to my house?" The word house hung in the air, loaded with meaning. It wasn't just a place to stay. It was a home being offered. Leah looked at her sleeping brother. "I think he needs to rest first." "Then let's go home," Victor decided, setting his course. "Sophia, could you call Dr. Mills?" "I'd like him to check on the kids as soon as possible." Sophia nodded, taking out her phone. As he drove through the waking city, Victor felt something stirring within himself as well. A purpose, a direction. Olivia's voice from his dream echoed in his mind. "Some people need you now, just like I needed you once." The emptiness that had occupied him for so long was beginning to be filled by something new. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but perhaps it was hope. And for the first time in a year, that felt like enough. The automatic gate of the Hale mansion opened with a soft hum. Victor drove slowly along the polished stone driveway, watching in the rearview mirror for the children's reactions. Noah had woken up and stared out the window, wide-eyed. Leah kept her usual guarded expression, though Victor noticed a flash of surprise as the main house came fully into view. The Hale mansion was an imposing two-story building with large windows and a classic facade. The garden, meticulously maintained by a weekly service, featured geometric flower beds and neatly trimmed trees. Everything was immaculate. Everything was lifeless. "Is this where you live?" Noah asked, his small voice a blend of awe and intimidation. "Yes," Victor answered simply, parking in the circular driveway. "Alone?" Leah's low question broke the silence. Victor hesitated. "Yes, alone." When he turned off the engine, a disconcerting silence enveloped the car, as though all realized the gravity of the scene. A well-dressed stranger bringing two abandoned children into his empty mansion. The absurdity of it did not escape Victor. "Let's go inside," he finally said, opening his door. "It's getting cold out here." The interior was even more impressive. A grand foyer with a marble floor and a sweeping staircase. Every detail spoke of wealth, sophistication, and good taste, and solitude. Leah clutched Noah's hand as they looked around, clearly feeling like intruders in a museum after hours. You can leave your shoes here," Victor indicated, hoping to ease the tension. Noah quickly obliged, eagerly slipping off his tattered sneakers. Leah hesitated, but finally removed hers as well, revealing worn socks with a small hole in the toe. Victor tried not to stare at that telling detail. "Let's head to the kitchen first," he suggested. "You two must be hungry." The kitchen was spacious, with granite countertops, dark wooden cabinets, and stainless steel appliances. It also struck Victor how ridiculously formal it was for two small children. Everything was adult, practical, devoid of color. "Have a seat," he gestured to the high stools around the center island. Noah tried to climb onto a stool and failed. Instinctively, Victor moved to help, but Leah was already there, lifting her brother with practiced ease. "What would you like to eat?" Victor asked, opening the fridge to see what he had. Its contents were uninspiring. Some fruit, milk, eggs, basic vegetables. The pantry wasn't much better. "Anything," Leah answered. The phrase sounded rehearsed, as though used many times before. Victor felt a pang. A child who had learned not to be picky because there was rarely a choice. "How about scrambled eggs and toast?" he suggested. "And maybe some juice." Noah nodded eagerly. Leah just gave a single nod. As Victor prepared the simple breakfast, he felt strangely self-conscious. How long had it been since he cooked for anyone but himself? Since the accident, his meals at home had been purely functional, when not skipped entirely. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. "Excuse me," he said, answering. "Hello, Sophia?" "Dr. Chen will be there in an hour," Sophia informed him. "I had to give her a brief overview of the situation. I hope you don't mind." "Not at all, thank you." "How are the kids?" Victor glanced at them. Noah was busily exploring the countertop with curious fingers, while Leah watched Victor's every move with watchful eyes. "They're adjusting. I'm about to feed them." "Great. I'm at the market picking up some essentials." "I'll be there soon." Victor thanked her and hung up. Returning to the stove, he finished the eggs and served them onto 2 plates, adding toast before placing everything in front of the children. "Help yourselves," he said, hearing how formal he sounded. Then more gently, "Eat as much as you want." Noah began devouring the food immediately, but Leah waited until Victor had stepped aside before starting to eat. Her movements were restrained, as though worried the food might be taken away at any moment. Victor watched silently, struggling against a surge of emotions he was unprepared to handle. There was something deeply wrong in children who ate with that kind of anxious restraint, something that pointed to a failure beyond their individual circumstances, a societal failure, a communal failure, a failure he, with all his wealth and influence, had been conveniently blind to. When they finished, Noah had a bit of egg at the corner of his mouth. Leah automatically wiped it away with a napkin, a motherly gesture that felt both touching and disturbingly natural for someone her age. "This house is really big," Victor said, breaking the silence. "I'll show you where you can stay." Upstairs, Victor led them down the wide corridor with its plush carpeting. He deliberately passed quickly by the door that remained always closed, Olivia's room, and opened the door to one of the guest rooms. "You can stay here for now." The room was spacious, with a king-size bed, elegant furniture, and a private bathroom. Its colors were neutral, beige, white, light blue. There was nothing particularly childlike in the space. "It's really big," Leah commented, seeming slightly intimidated. Victor hadn't considered that. Of course it would be enormous for children used to small, cramped spaces. "You'll get used to it," he said, not knowing what else to say. "The bathroom is over there. There are clean towels, soap, toothpaste, everything you need." Leah nodded, absorbing the information. "Doctor Chen will come in about an hour to examine you," Victor added. "She's a doctor." Leah's eyes immediately sharpened. "Why?" "Just to make sure you're both okay. He hesitated. "After being on the street for a while." She didn't appear convinced, but she did not argue. "In the meantime, you can take a bath and rest a bit," Victor showed her how to work the shower, adjusting the water temperature, pointing out the toiletries. Leah watched closely, committing every step to memory. "I'll leave you to it," he said finally. "I'll be downstairs if you need anything." Leaving the room, Victor realized he'd been holding his breath. Everything about the situation felt intensely awkward. The formality with which he spoke to the children, the strangeness of having other people in his house, the sense of inadequacy. He went downstairs and sat in the living room, a room he rarely used. The elegant furniture, the artwork on the walls, the carefully selected decorative items, everything now felt painfully pointless. Half an hour later, he heard light footsteps on the stairs. Leah was coming down carefully, holding Noah's hand. Both had wet hair and were wearing the same clothes as before, but they were noticeably cleaner. "Feel better after the bath?" Victor asked, standing up. Noah smiled, nodding enthusiastically. "The tub is huge." Victor realized he was smiling back, an almost forgotten movement of his facial muscles. "The shampoo smells nice," Leah added, almost shyly. Her hair, now clean, appeared a shade lighter than Victor had initially thought. The doorbell rang before Victor could respond. Noah flinched instinctively, pressing himself against his sister. "That must be Sophia or the doctor," Victor explained, heading to the door. It was Sophia, carrying several shopping bags. Behind her was an Asian woman in her mid-40s with a medical bag. Dr. Chen, Victor presumed. "I brought the basics," Sophia said as she entered. "Food, some clothes that might fit, children's toothbrushes." She trailed off when she noticed the children in the living room. "Hello, you two." Leah nodded politely. Noah partially hid behind her. Dr. Chen stepped forward, a calm smile on her face. You must be Leah. And this is Noah, correct?" Leah nodded again, more wary now. "I'm Dr. Chen. I'd like to examine both of you, if that's all right." "Why?" Leah asked once more, the same question she had posed to Victor. The doctor was not intimidated by the distrust. "To make sure you're healthy, and to see if you need any medicine or vitamins." Leah still seemed unconvinced, but looked to Victor as if seeking confirmation. "It's okay," he assured her. "Dr. Chen just wants to help." "Could we use your office?" the doctor asked Victor. He nodded, guiding them through the house. His office, another rarely used space, was well lit, with a comfortable couch for the children. "I'll stay outside," he said, sensing that his presence might make the children uncomfortable during the exam. Out in the hall, he found Sophia organizing the groceries in the kitchen. "You thought of everything," he commented, glancing at the bag's contents. There were simple but nutritious foods, some basic children's clothing, toiletries for kids, and even a few modest toys and books. "I tried to imagine what they'd need right away," Sophia replied. "I wasn't sure about sizes, so I bought a bit bigger. They can grow into them." The phrase, "they can grow," carried an implication Victor did not miss. A suggestion of permanence, of continuity. "Sophia, he began, unsure of what to say. "You don't need to explain," she interrupted gently. "I saw your face last night at the restaurant. It was like watching someone wake up from a deep sleep." Victor said nothing. He couldn't deny it. Something had changed inside him since the moment Leah appeared at his table. An hour later, Dr. Chen emerged from the office, closing the door behind her. "How are they?" Victor asked immediately. The doctor sighed. "Physically, not as bad as I feared, but not as good as they should be. Moderate malnutrition in both. Mild anemia. Their skin is dry, likely due to exposure and poor nutrition. Leah has some calluses on her hands indicating physical labor, probably from taking care of her brother. Noah has a slight developmental delay in his motor skills, but nothing proper nutrition and the right stimulation can't fix." Victor absorbed the information, feeling both relief that it wasn't worse and anger that it was bad enough. "What should we do?" "Regular, nutritious meals, plenty of vegetables, fruit, protein. I'll prescribe vitamins, moderate physical activity, and routine. Children need routine more than anything." The doctor met Victor's eyes. "They also need emotional stability, Mr. Hale. They're quite shaken by recent abandonment." "They weren't abandoned," Victor corrected automatically. "Their mother's in the hospital." "Yes, Leah told me. Still, Their perception is one of abandonment, especially Noah's. Leah has taken on a caretaker role, which is concerning for someone so young. She needs permission to be a child again. Victor nodded, feeling the weight of the responsibility he had assumed. What about the legal situation? He asked quietly. Dr. Chen exchanged a look with Sophia. Technically, you should notify social services immediately, but... She hesitated. But, Victor prompted, I know the system. If they're taken now, they'll be separated, placed in different foster homes. It would be, she chose her words carefully, counterproductive to their recovery. What do you suggest? That you look after them for the time being. We can try to locate the mother in the meantime. If she's able to reclaim them, great. If not, the doctor left the sentence incomplete. Victor gazed through the office door, which was slightly ajar. Leah sat on the couch, flipping through a book the doctor had likely shown her. Noah was on the floor, playing with a toy stethoscope Dr. Chen must have given him. For a moment, they looked just like normal kids on a normal day. I'll take care of them, he said finally, as long as necessary. The following weeks established a new routine at the Hale mansion. Victor learned to adapt his life to the presence of the children. Small changes at first, regular meals, set bedtime, space for play, that gradually turned into a complete reorganization of his existence. Sophia came by almost daily, bringing items she remembered they would need, offering advice, helping with practical matters. She bought more clothes for the kids, age-appropriate toys, colorful books. The mansion, once so silent, began to fill with new sounds. The occasional laughter from Noah, which grew more frequent as he felt safer. Leah's curious questions about objects around the house, the patter of small feet racing down the hallway. Leah remained vigilant, but gradually started to relax. When she realized meals were regular and guaranteed, she stopped hiding food in her pockets for Noah. When she understood she could bathe every day, she began to enjoy the ritual. And when she saw that Victor truly didn't intend to separate them, she allowed Noah to venture a bit farther from her side. Noah flourished more quickly. After a few weeks of proper nutrition, his cheeks filled out, his eyes grew brighter. He discovered the garden and spent hours exploring it under Leah or Victor's watchful eye. He began speaking more cute words and phrases emerging like blossoms after a rain. Victor found himself doing things he never imagined. He learned to make macaroni with cheese sauce, Noah's favorite. He discovered how to braid Leah's hair after watching an online tutorial. He improvised a pajama party in the living room, complete with blankets and cushions. The subtlest transformation was his own. Victor Cheers, who had spent a year avoiding life, found himself forced to engage again. The children demanded his presence, attention, and energy, and surprisingly, he had all of that to give. One evening, as he picked up toys scattered around the living room after the children went to bed, Victor realized he hadn't thought about the accident in several days. The realization hit him hard. Not that he had forgotten Eliza and Olivia, he never would. But the pain had become something different, something that coexisted with moments of not exactly happiness, but perhaps purpose. Meaning, upstairs, he could hear the children's soft voices, Noah asking for a story, Leah patiently telling something she'd made up, sounds that belonged in a home, not a mausoleum. Victor stopped in front of that always closed door, Olivia's room. His hand hovered over the doorknob, as it always did, but this time, instead of hesitating and moving on, he turned the knob and opened the door. The room was exactly as he had left it, the bed still made with a pink polka-dotted blanket, the shelves filled with colorful books and dolls, photos on the walls, the little star sticker on the ceiling that glowed in the dark. Victor stepped inside, feeling the familiar weight of sorrow but also something else, a kind of peace. He sat on the small bed, the scent of Olivia long gone, replaced by the neutral odor of a closed room. "I miss you," he whispered to the empty space. "I always will." But for the first time in a year, it wasn't only pain he felt, it was gratitude. Gratitude for the years they had together. Gratitude for the memories. And strangely, gratitude for the chance encounter that brought two needy children to his table at the Lumiere. Two children who, without intending to, were teaching him to live again. Victor stood up and left the room, leaving the door open behind him. Perhaps it was time to let some fresh air in. The Hale Mansion's kitchen was filled with the aroma of a hearty vegetable soup. Victor, sleeves rolled up and wearing an apron Sophia had insisted he buy, stirred the broth carefully while referring to the list of recommendations Dr. Chen had left. Leafy greens every day, lean protein in every meal, a variety of fruits. Iron and vitamin supplements, he muttered to himself, checking if he was following every guideline. At the kitchen table, Noah was busy with his new coloring pad while he waited for lunch. 3 weeks had passed, and the change was visible. His previously sunken cheeks now had a healthy hue, and his once frail legs were stronger when he ran around the garden. "Is it ready yet?" asked Liam, entering the kitchen. She carried the vitamin bottle she had to take before meals. 5 more minutes, Victor replied, watching as the girl neatly grabbed a glass of water and swallowed the 2 colorful capsules without complaint. The medication routine had become part of their day. Early on, Leah had resisted, distrustful of any sort of medicine. Now, after Dr. Chen patiently explained the importance of each supplement, she took them without argument, even reminding Victor when it was time for Noah's dose. "I remembered we need to go to the pharmacy today," Victor said as he served soup into bowls. "We're running low on Noah's tonic." Leah nodded seriously. "We also need more sunscreen. Dr. Chen said our skin is still sensitive." Victor smiled inwardly. The girl had memorized every medical instruction, taking responsibility for her own recovery, and her brother's with admirable determination. They sat at the table, Victor ensuring each bowl had the right balance of vegetables and protein. Meals were now calculated with precision. Every nutrient counted in the fight against their previous malnutrition. "Eat slowly," Leah reminded Noah, who had developed a habit of scarfing down food, a reflex from the days they never knew when the next meal might come. "It's delicious," Noah said between spoonfuls, a ring of soup already forming around his mouth. Victor observed how both of them now ate more calmly. In the first weeks, it had been a struggle, Leah hiding food in her pockets for later, Noah panicking when the plate emptied, afraid there might not be more. Dr. Chen had explained, "It's food trauma. It takes time for the body and mind to believe there will always be another meal." After the soup, Victor served fresh sliced fruit and yogurt enriched with probiotics, another item from Dr. Chen's extensive plan. The nutritional program was meticulous, designed specifically for children recovering from malnutrition. "Can I play in the garden afterward?" Noah asked, licking the spoon clean of yogurt. "Sure, but only after you rest a bit," Victor reminded him. "Remember what Dr. Chen said about not overexerting yourself?" Noah made a face but nodded. The post-meal rest was another rule set by the doctor, to allow the body to focus on digestion and absorb nutrients, rather than spending energy on physical activity. While the children finished lunch, Victor checked the schedule posted on the refrigerator. Tomorrow was weighing and measuring day, a weekly ritual to track their progress. Next to it was a list of blood tests to be repeated at the end of the month. "Sunbathing is at 3 today," Leah asked, showing she was also paying attention to the schedule. "That's right," Victor confirmed. 20 minutes, with sunscreen. Controlled sunlight exposure was part of the treatment for their low vitamin D levels, common deficiencies in malnourished children. Dr. Chen had explained, especially those without proper shelter. After the meal, Noah lay on the living room couch for his mandatory rest, while Leah helped Victor organize the afternoon's medications. "Dr. Chen said we're improving fast," the girl remarked, separating the bottles. "Yes, she was very pleased at the last checkup," Victor replied, recalling the doctor's approving look upon seeing their increased weight and height. "When will we stop taking so many meds?" Leah asked, a rare moment of impatience slipping past her usually composed demeanor. Victor smiled in understanding. "When your bodies have fully recovered what they lost, Dr. Chen said it could take a few more months, but we're on the right track." Leah seemed to accept that answer, returning her attention to the vitamins. Victor noticed how her arms, once so thin they were alarming, now looked healthier. The scrapes on her knees and elbows, marks of sleeping on hard ground, were almost healed, thanks to the special ointment they applied religiously. In the living room, Noah had fallen asleep, his chest rising and falling in a peaceful rhythm. The dark circles under his eyes, so pronounced when they arrived, had nearly disappeared. His sleep, once restless and haunted by frequent alarms, was now deep and restorative. Victor covered him with a light blanket and returned to the kitchen, where Leah sat at the table, drawing in her new sketchbook. He watched as her fingers, once trembling from weakness when holding a pencil, now moved with increasing steadiness across the page. "What are you drawing?" he asked, sitting beside her. "Our routine," Leah replied, showing him a color-coded calendar with symbols representing their different meds and daily activities. Victor felt a surge of emotion. The girl had transformed a strict medical regimen into something creative, a way to take control of her own healing process. "It's amazing," he said sincerely. The doorbell rang, announcing Sophia's arrival. As always, she came laden with bags, this time full of nutritional supplements, books on healthy eating for children, and some new clothes in bigger sizes to accommodate the growth beginning to show. "How are my favorite patients?" Sophia asked as she entered the kitchen. "They're getting better," Victor answered, genuinely pleased to say so. And it was true. Day after day, meal after meal, medication after medication, the children were reclaiming not just their physical health, but something deeper, the assurance that their basic needs would be met, that another plate would always be on the table. And Victor, without noticing, was healing too, finding purpose in the small acts of care that now filled his days. The house, once silent as a tomb, now pulsed with the sounds of life, the medication timer beeping, water running for warm baths, pages turning in child nutrition books, two little hearts beating stronger each day. Rain softly pattered against the windows of the Hale mansion. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind of weather that invites coziness. Victor was in the living room, reviewing some foundation documents, while Noah played with a set of colorful blocks on the rug. Leah sat at the coffee table, flipping through a magazine Sophia had left on her last visit. The comfortable silence was interrupted only by the sound of blocks clacking together and the occasional rustle of turning pages. Victor looked up from his papers and watched the children. Nearly 2 months in, how the transformation was remarkable. Noah was more talkative, with more coordinated movements and a fuller face. Leah still maintained her guard, but she could now relax for longer stretches, allowing herself moments of childish distraction. Victor caught one such moment now. Leah had stopped flipping through the magazine and was focusing on a napkin. She was sketching with the tip of a pencil, as though attempting to copy something from the page. Curious, Victor quietly approached and peered over her shoulder. His heart constricted at the realization of what she was doing. The magazine featured an ad with large, colorful letters. On the napkin, Leah was trying to replicate some of them, uneven lines vaguely resembling the printed shapes. "You like letters?" Victor asked softly, not wanting to startle her. Leah turned around quickly, as though caught doing something wrong. Her hands instinctively covered the napkin. "I was just drawing," she replied, a light blush coloring her cheeks. Victor sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "Would you like to learn how to write your name?" he asked, casually masking the weight of his question. Leah's eyes widened slightly. She looked at the napkin, then at Victor, as though weighing his sincerity. A small smile began to form, quickly tempered by learned caution. Can I?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Of course," Victor replied, grabbing a notepad and pen from the side table. "Let's start with something simple." Carefully, he wrote 3 uppercase letters at the top of the page. "Lia. This is your name," he explained, pointing at each letter as he pronounced them. "Lia. Leah." The girl watched in fascination, as though witnessing a magic trick. Her fingers lightly traced the letters, following their outlines. "Would you like to try?" Victor offered, handing her the pen. Leah hesitated, then accepted it. She held the pen awkwardly, gripping it too tightly. Victor gently adjusted her hand, showing her a more comfortable way to hold it. "It's easier this way," he explained. "Now copy the letters below mine." Tongue pressed between her lips in deep concentration, Leah started drawing. Her first L came out crooked, more like a tilted I. She frowned, visibly frustrated. "That's really good for a first try," Victor encouraged. "Try again." "The L is like a corner, a line down and another to the side." She nodded, trying again. This time the letter was more recognizable. A genuine smile lit her face momentarily. "That's right, now the I, just a straight line." That one was easier. Leah drew an almost perfect vertical line, gaining confidence. Finally the A. It's a bit trickier. Like a triangle with a line across the middle. The A was harder. Her first attempt looked like a sideways H. The second had the crossbar cutting all the way through, but on the third try, she produced something that resembled an A. "L-I-A," Leah pronounced, looking at her creation with a mixture of pride and wonder. "Leah?" That was when something happened that Victor had not seen since the children arrived. Leah laughed, a brief, crystal-clear sound, born of pure joy. It was so unexpected that even Noah stopped playing to look at his sister in curiosity. "You did it," Victor said, feeling a strange tightness in his throat. "That's your name." Leah looked at him, her eyes gleaming. "Can I try again?" "As many times as you want." For the next half hour, the room was filled with the sound of pencil on paper. Leah practiced her name over and over, each attempt firmer than the last. Noah eventually joined them, curious, and Victor showed him how to draw an N, promising to teach him his entire name when he was ready. When Sophia arrived later that day with the week's supplies, she found the house in an unusually high-spirited state. Leah ran up to show her what she had accomplished, clutching the paper as though it were a precious treasure. "Look, I learned to write my name." Sophia glanced at Victor over the girl's head, a silent question in her eyes. He just smiled, feeling a strange warmth in his chest that he couldn't quite name. That night, after the children were in bed, Victor returned to the living room and picked up the sheet of paper. He looked at Leah's progress, from the first shaky attempts to the final version, which was already quite legible. Carefully, he cut out the last, the best one, and took it with him. In the children's room, he moved silently to avoid waking them. Noah was sound asleep, one arm flung dramatically over the pillow. Leah lay on her side, as usual, protectively facing her brother even in sleep. With a piece of tape, Victor fixed the paper on the wall by Leah's bed, where it would be the first thing she saw upon waking. 3 simple letters, a name, an identity. It was more than a literacy exercise. It was the first written word of her new life, a small milestone of normalcy in a life that had been anything but normal. Victor left the room as quietly as he had entered, leaving behind that simple testament to progress. Elia, glowing faintly in the darkness, like a promise. Rain had been falling for 2 days straight, keeping the children confined to the mansion. Victor had worked remotely most of the morning, attending video conferences in his office, while Leah and Noah explored corners of the house they still hadn't fully discovered, despite having lived there for almost 3 months now. The Hale mansion was large enough to hide surprises around every corner, rarely used rooms, shelves of untouched books, closets storing items from years ago. A treasure trove of discoveries for 2 curious children. That afternoon, after lunch, Victor allowed them into the library, a spacious room lined with dark wood shelves, complete with a rolling ladder to reach the higher volumes. Leah had fallen in love with the space at first sight. Since learning to write her name, her interest in letters and books grew daily. "Make yourselves at home," Victor said, settling into a chair with his laptop. "Just be careful with the ladder." Noah quickly busied himself with a collection of variously sized globes on a low table, spinning them in fascination and pointing at countries and oceans at random, inventing stories of pirates and explorers. Leah, meanwhile, walked slowly among the shelves, running her fingers over the book's spines as if hoping to absorb their stories by touch. Occasionally, she'd pull one out, flip through a few pages, then carefully return it to its place. Her real interest sparked when she came across a section of photo albums, large volumes bound in leather, the dates stamped along the spines. Leah removed one that appeared well used, its edges slightly worn from frequent handling. She sat on the rug and opened the album in her lap. The first pages showed a young, beautiful woman with dark hair and a radiant smile. In some photos, she appeared with Victor, a different Victor, one with fewer worry lines on his face, one who smiled in a way Leah had never seen. As she turned the pages, a new figure began to appear, a little girl, first a baby in the woman's arms, then a child with brown hair and bright eyes. Leah gazed, enthralled, at the pictures that told a story. Birthdays, Christmases, days at the beach, simple moments of a happy family. In the middle of the album, one picture particularly caught her attention. It had been removed and then put back, as though someone had carried it around before returning it. It showed the little girl, maybe slightly younger than Leah, sitting on a swing. Her smile was wide, her eyes squinted with the force of her joy. Behind her, partially visible, was Victor pushing the swing, his own expression brimming with happiness and pride. Leah carefully took the photo from the album and approached Victor, who typed away absently at his computer. "Is she your daughter?" she asked, her soft voice breaking the library's hush. Victor froze, fingers still on the keyboard. For a moment, Leah feared she had made a terrible mistake. The color drained from his face, and something flickered in his eyes. Pain, raw and pure, so palpable she could almost feel it. Slowly, Victor closed the laptop and set it aside. He reached out, and Leah handed him the photo. He looked at it for a long while, his thumb gently stroking the glossy surface. "Yes," he finally answered, his voice rougher than usual. "She got very sick. I did everything I could, but she ended up passing away." The response was simple but laden with meaning. Leah stood there, unsure whether to speak or walk away. She chose to stay, sensing instinctively that Victor needed that moment. "What was her name?" she asked after a few seconds. "Olivia," Victor replied, the word vibrating in the air between them. "She was 5. Leah stepped closer, looking again at the photo Victor held. She studied the little girl's face, the tiny gap between her front teeth, the freckles sprinkled across her nose, the light in her eyes. "She looks happy," Leah said gently. A simple observation, but deeply true. Victor swallowed hard, his eyes fixed on the picture. "She was," he agreed. A trembling smile touched his lips, a bittersweet blend of sorrow and cherished memories. "She loved that swing, always asked to go higher, higher." Something in his voice had changed. It was no longer just pain. There was warmth, nostalgia, even a hint of joy in the recollection. "What else did she like to do?" Leah asked, perching on the arm of Victor's chair. Victor looked at her, surprised by the question but grateful. It was as if Leah had opened a door he had kept locked for a long time, allowing memories buried by grief to finally breathe. "She loved stories," he began, voice growing steadier. "Every night she would ask for 3 bedtime stories. We'd negotiate and settle on 2. He let out a small laugh, the first time he'd laughed while talking about Olivia in a very long time. "And she loved to dance. Any music, anywhere, in the supermarket, in the car, in the yard." As Victor spoke, Noah drifted over, quietly sitting on the floor at Victor's feet. He listened intently, his large eyes fixed on Victor's face, sensing the importance of the moment even without fully understanding it. Leah simply listened without interrupting, offering her attentive presence as a silent gift. Of all the people in the house, she might have been the one who best understood the language of loss. She was young, but old enough to feel its weight. "She had a special dance when she was happy," Victor continued, his eyes now far away, seeing something beyond the rainy library. "She'd spin and jump with her arms open, like she was trying to hug the whole world." Leah smiled, imagining the scene. "Like a butterfly," she suggested softly. Victor looked at her, slightly astonished. "Yes, exactly like a butterfly. That's what Eliza, my wife, used to say." Another silence, but different this time. Not the heavy silence of unacknowledged grief, but something gentler, almost peaceful. The rain tapped against the windows, creating a gentle background melody. "I miss my mom too," Leah finally said, so quietly that Victor had to lean in to hear. "Sometimes I wake up and forget she's not here." Victor nodded, fully understanding that experience. "That happens to me too," he admitted. Another moment of connection. Leah placed her small hand over Victor's, a gesture so simple yet deeply comforting. It was the first time Victor had truly spoken about his loss with someone, openly, not just referencing death's blunt reality. And it was with a girl who understood silence, who knew the void left by absent loved ones, who understood how to carry that absence without words. "Can I see more pictures of her?" Leah asked after a few minutes. Victor hesitated only for a moment before nodding. "Of course. Let's look together." With Noah settling in beside them, Victor turned the album's pages, slowly bringing Olivia back to life through memories and stories. For the first time in a long time, he spoke of his daughter not as someone he had lost, but as someone he had loved, and still loved. Outside, the rain finally began to lessen, and a weak sunbeam tried to break through the clouds. Morning light bathed the Hale mansion in a golden glow on a Saturday. Victor, accustomed to his new routine, woke early to make breakfast. Over the past months, this morning ritual had become special, not a lonely task, but a quiet celebration of the household's new rhythm. As he set out the ingredients for pancakes, flour, eggs, milk, a bit of sugar, he heard light footsteps on the stairs. Leah appeared in the doorway, already dressed, hair neatly combed. In the 4 months since she arrived, she had gained not just weight and color, but also a new bearing. A hint of caution still lingered, but she was no longer perpetually on high alert, like a small animal ready to flee. "Good morning," she greeted, walking over to the counter. "Can I help?" Victor smiled. "Sure. I'm making pancakes." Leah's eyes lit up. Pancakes had quickly become both children's favorite breakfast. "Would you like to learn how to make them?" Victor offered, somewhat surprised at himself for suggesting it. It was the first time he'd proposed teaching her something other than letters and numbers during their afternoon sessions. Leah nodded, her excitement visible on her usually composed face. "First, we mix the dry ingredients," Victor explained, indicating the flour and sugar. "Can you measure 2 cups of flour?" With meticulous care, Leah did so, the tip of her tongue peeking between her lips in concentration. Her small hands moved with growing precision, the result of her drawing and writing practice. "Like this?" she asked, the measuring cup perfectly leveled. "Perfect," Victor praised. "Now we add a pinch of salt and 2 tablespoons of sugar." Step by step, he guided her, cracking the eggs, be careful with the shells, beating the mixture. Not too hard, just until it's combined. Adding milk gradually, see how the texture changes. Leah absorbed each instruction intently, as if memorizing something vital. For a child who had experienced so much instability, perhaps it was exactly that. Learning how to create something reliable, something that could be repeated to the same comforting result every time. "Now comes the hardest part," Victor warned, lighting the stove under the skillet. Flipping the pancakes at the right time. He demonstrated with the first one, poured a small ladle of batter into the hot pan, waited for tiny bubbles to appear on the surface, then flipped it with a quick flick of the wrist, revealing a perfectly golden underside. "Your turn," he said, offering Leah the spatula. She hesitated, glancing from the spatula to the skillet with a flicker of apprehension. What if I mess up? The question carried more weight than her words suggested. Victor recognized the underlying fear of failure, of disappointment, of losing something because of a single mistake. "Then we'll make another," he answered simply. "We have enough batter for plenty of tries." Something eased in her expression. She took the spatula and, imitating Victor, poured a circle of batter into the skillet. "How do I know when to flip it?" she asked, studying the pancake closely. "Watch the bubbles," Victor said, pointing. "When they're all over the surface and the edges look firm." Leah watched the pancake with such concentration that Victor could practically hear her mental cogs turning. When she decided it was time, she slid the spatula under the batter carefully and, with a quick motion, flipped it. It wasn't perfect, the pancake folded a bit on one side, but it was undeniably a pancake. "I did it," Leah exclaimed, a rare burst of pure excitement. "Looks great," Victor praised, genuinely impressed. "For your first time, that's amazing." Bolstered by her success, Leah continued. The second pancake came out better than the first. The third was better still. By the fifth, she had mastered the technique, producing round, golden discs. The smell of freshly made pancakes drew Noah, who shuffled into the kitchen still in pajamas, hair tousled, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Leah's making breakfast?" he asked, delighted by the idea. "Yes," Victor confirmed, helping the boy climb onto a tall stool by the counter. "And she's doing a fantastic job." Leah smiled, a real smile that lit her whole face, making her look her actual age rather than the little adult she'd been forced to become. "I want to learn too," Noah declared. "When you're a bit older," Leah promised, transferring a stack of pancakes to a plate. "The stove's too hot for you right now." Victor watched the exchange with a pang in his chest. It was the first time he'd seen Leah acting like a sister, not a substitute mother, setting boundaries out of genuine care, not fear or necessity. All three sat at the kitchen table, the golden stack of pancakes in the center, surrounded by jars of jam, honey, and butter. Noah dove into his portion with typical enthusiasm, while Leah savored each bite carefully. "These are delicious, Leah," Victor complimented after tasting them. "You have a knack for this." She lowered her eyes, but not before he caught the gleam of pride in them. "Can I make them again tomorrow?" she asked timidly. "Of course. We can do this every Saturday if you like. It'll be our little ritual." The idea of a ritual, something regular and reliable they could anticipate, seemed to please Leah. She nodded, satisfied. As they ate, Victor noticed Noah watching Leah intensely, as though puzzled by something. Finally, Noah pointed his fork at her and pronounced distinctly, "Leah." It wasn't the first time he'd said his sister's name, of course, but something was different this time. There was intent behind it, a purpose. Noah then pointed at his own pancake and repeated, "Leah." Victor understood immediately. Noah wasn't just calling his sister, he was attributing the creation of the pancakes to her, recognizing her accomplishment. It was the first time he used a word to identify not just a person or object, but to express a more abstract idea, authorship, creation. Leah also understood. Her eyes widened, then softened with a controlled surge of emotion. "Yes, Noah, I made the pancakes." Noah beamed, satisfied that she'd understood him, and resumed eating with renewed enthusiasm. Victor lowered his gaze to his own plate, hiding the sudden rush of emotion. These small, ordinary moments, ones that didn't seem dramatic or extraordinary, were gradually reacquainting him with life. Every little victory the children achieved felt, in some way, like his own. After breakfast, Leah insisted on helping with the dishes while Noah scattered his favorite building blocks across the living room floor. A light rain outside created a cozy atmosphere, perfect for a quiet day indoors. Victor was drying a plate when an unexpected sound made him pause. Noah was laughing in the living room, a pure, carefree laugh. Leah heard it too, and met Victor's eyes in a shared acknowledgement of how rare that sound had been. "Let's see what's so funny," Victor suggested, setting the dish towel aside. In the living room, they found Noah surrounded by an elaborate block construction. What had started as a simple tower now looked like an entire city, with structures of varying heights connected by makeshift bridges. "Look what I made," he exclaimed proudly. "It's our house, but way, way bigger." Victor knelt beside the creation, examining it seriously. "It's impressive, Noah. You worked hard on it." "This one is you," Noah explained, pointing to a blue block perched atop one of the towers. "And this is Leah," he continued, indicating a red block nearby. "And this is me," he concluded, showing a yellow block set between the other two. The simplicity of that representation, three colorful blocks together at the top of a structure, carried an emotional truth that struck Victor with unexpected force. In a few months, they had, indeed, built something together. Not perfect, not conventional, but solid. "It's not done yet," Noah added, searching around for more blocks. "We need more." "Can we help?" Leah asked, already sitting on the rug beside her brother. Noah nodded eagerly, handing her a few blocks. Victor joined them, sitting on the floor cross-legged, a position he hadn't assumed since Olivia. Over the next hour, the construction expanded in all directions. Noah directed the project with surprising clarity, while Leah contributed meticulous details, and Victor provided structural stability for the more ambitious sections. Partway through, Leah began spinning a story about the inhabitants of the block city. A kind king living in the tallest tower, a gardener who cared for the green spaces, represented by cushions, a librarian who guarded all the kingdom's books. Noah jumped right in, adding his own characters, a dragon tamer, a bridge builder, a child who could fly. Victor simply listened, enchanted by the unbridled creativity that surfaced now that the children had regular meals and a sense of safety. It was like watching long dormant flowers finally bloom after a drought. At a particularly dramatic point in the story, when Noah's dragon tamer saved the library from a fire, the boy acted out the scene so vividly that Leah burst into laughter. Her laughter, still a rare occurrence, prompted Noah's, which in turn triggered something in Victor, a genuine laugh, rising from deep within him. The house echoed with the sound, 3 people laughing together, each carrying their own story of loss, finding a fleeting moment of shared joy. The walls that had absorbed only silence and sorrow for so long now reverberated with life. When the game finally ended, with promises to continue after lunch, Victor remembered something he'd bought a few days earlier. He asked the children to wait and hurried upstairs, returning with a simply wrapped package. "This is for you, Leah," he said, handing it over, "for making such delicious pancakes this morning." Leah accepted the present with wide eyes. She unwrapped it carefully, revealing a hardcover notebook with thick, high-quality pages, along with a set of colored pencils and fine-tip pens. "For you to draw or write," Victor explained, suddenly self-conscious. Was it too much? He didn't want to pressure her. Leah opened the notebook, running her fingers over the blank pages. There was a reverence in her touch that made Victor realize this was likely the first truly new object she'd received in a long time. Not second-hand, not borrowed, not a basic necessity, but something intended solely for her expression and growth. "Thank you," she said, her voice laced with carefully contained emotion. "I'm going to write our recipes, starting with pancakes. A promise of continuity, of the future." Victor felt a pleasant warmth expand in his chest. "That's an excellent start," he agreed. Noah leaned over to inspect his sister's new gift. "Are you going to teach me how to write pancake?" he asked Leah. "I'll teach you to write anything you want," she promised, pulling him into an impulsive hug. Victor watched, aware he was witnessing something precious. Knowledge passed on not out of obligation, but affection. A promise made not from necessity, but choice. That evening, after dinner, while Noah took a bath supervised by Victor, Leah sat at the kitchen table with her new notebook. With intense concentration, she wrote on the first page in careful letters, "The Hale Family Recipes." When Victor returned to the kitchen and saw what she'd written, he paused in the doorway, momentarily speechless. Leah looked at him, a silent question in her gaze. Had she overstepped, assumed too much? Victor crossed the kitchen and sat beside her. "It's perfect," he said simply. Then something extraordinary happened. Leah smiled, not a hesitant or restrained smile, but a full, confident one, and Victor returned it, his own smile just as genuine. They laughed together, not at anything in particular, but out of the pure joy of sharing that moment, acknowledging one another, breaking down the last barrier. It was the symbolic birth of trust. Not just Leah's trust in Victor, but Victor's trust in himself, his ability to care for, protect, and nurture again, to create a home defined not by walls and a roof, but by routines, shared achievements, and finally, laughter. The house no longer smelled of grief. It smelled of pancakes, new pencils, children's shampoo, and possibilities. Night fell on the Hale mansion with a peacefulness Victor had learned to cherish. Over the past 5 months, a new routine had taken hold in the house. Family dinners at the table, baths at the right time, bedtime stories, small rituals that anchored their days, giving them structure and meaning. That night, after making sure both children were asleep, Victor retreated to his office. There was backlog from the foundation to attend to. For hours, he immersed himself in reports and spreadsheets, his mind divided between the numbers and the quiet satisfaction of knowing Leah and Noah were safely asleep upstairs. The clock showed a little after midnight when he finally shut down his computer and climbed the stairs, his steps light in the silent corridor. As he did every night, he paused by the children's door, which was left slightly ajar at Leah's request. Through the gap, he could see two sleeping forms. Noah curled into a ball, Leah stretched out beside him, one arm draped protectively over her brother even in sleep. Victor smiled to himself and continued to his own room. He changed quickly, brushed his teeth, and got into bed with a book he'd been trying to finish for weeks. The pages soon blurred before his tired eyes, and he set the book aside, turned out the light, and let himself sink into sleep's embrace. He wasn't sure how long he'd been asleep when a sound woke him, a faint creak of his bedroom door opening. Victor opened his eyes immediately, alert but not alarmed. There had been a few late-night visits over the months, bad dreams, a glass of water, a question that couldn't wait until morning. What startled him was seeing Leah standing at the door, her small body visibly trembling, her face wet with tears. "Leah?" Victor sat up, instantly awake. "What happened?" The girl entered, her steps unsteady, voice shaking with sobs. "He's burning up. I'm scared." Victor needed no further explanation. He threw the covers aside and followed Leah, who was already hurrying back to the room she shared with her brother. Noah lay curled under his blankets, his face flushed, breathing irregularly. Small whimpers escaped his chapped lips, and his hair clung to his sweat-damp forehead. Victor touched Noah's skin and immediately felt the alarming heat, a fever, and a high one, judging by the touch. "How long has he been like this?" he asked, searching the nightstand for the thermometer he kept there. "I don't know," Leah whispered, her voice small. "I woke up because he was moving around so much. Then I touched him and he was so hot." Victor passed the thermometer gently across Noah's forehead. The digital display beeped almost right away, 103.6 degrees. Far too high for comfort. "We're going to the hospital," he decided, no hesitation. The brief flash of panic in Leah's eyes was unmistakable, but she nodded, trusting Victor's judgment. In under 5 minutes, they were dressed, and Victor was carrying Noah wrapped in a light blanket. The boy was burning in his arms, alternating between lethargy and restless agitation. In the car, Leah sat in the back with her brother, holding his hand and murmuring reassuring words that contrasted with the obvious fear on her face. Victor drove through the sleeping city with controlled urgency, each red light a torment, every second dragging on. His mind raced through medical possibilities, viral infection, bacterial, some complication from their earlier malnutrition. Their health progress over the last few months made this abrupt setback feel especially cruel. The pediatric ER was moderately busy, even at that hour. Victor registered them at the desk, briefly explaining the situation. Noah's high fever secured them priority, but there was still a wait. In the waiting area, Leah remained unnervingly quiet, her eyes never leaving her brother, who was dozing fitfully in Victor's lap. Her face was a mask of mature worry far beyond her years. "He'll be fine," Victor assured her, placing a free hand gently on her shoulder. "The doctors here are very good." Leah didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice trembled with a fragility Victor seldom heard from her. "My mum came to the hospital. She never came back." Her words hit Victor like a physical blow. Of course, to Leah, hospitals weren't places of healing, but of permanent separation. Her terror wasn't only about Noah's health, but the fear of another irreversible loss. "Noah isn't as sick as your mother was," Victor said gently. "It's probably just a bad flu or infection. The doctors will give him medicine and we'll all go home soon." Leah bit her lip, unconvinced. "Promise." "I promise," Victor replied without hesitation. She reached out and gripped his hand in hers with surprising strength. "You promised you'd stay with us," she said, her dark eyes holding his with unsettling intensity. Victor felt the weight of those words. They weren't just a reminder of the promise he'd made months ago under a cold awning. They were a call to accountability, a plea for reassurance in a moment of fear. More than that, they signified trust, fragile, newly formed, precious. "And I intend to keep it," he responded, his voice steady despite the lump in his throat. A nurse appeared at the door, calling Noah's name. Victor stood, still holding the feverish boy. Leah refused to let go of his hand, walking close by his side as they followed the nurse down the white corridor. In the exam room, a young, efficient doctor checked Noah's vital signs, inspected his throat, listened to his lungs, and asked Victor questions, which he answered as best he could. "Looks like a bacterial tonsillitis," she concluded after the thorough check. "We'll start antibiotics right away. His fever should come down in the next 24 hours. Victor felt immense relief flood his body. Leah, who had been watching the exam anxiously, finally relaxed a bit. "He won't need to stay here?" she asked, her voice revealing her main concern. The doctor smiled kindly at Leah. "No, sweetie. We'll give him his first dose of medication here. Then you can take him home. Just keep giving him the meds as directed." Leah turned to Victor, wordlessly seeking confirmation. He nodded, matching the doctor's words. While they waited at the hospital pharmacy for the prescription, Noah stirred, his fever-glazed eyes meeting Leah's. "It's okay," she whispered, stroking his sweaty hair. "We'll be home soon." Victor noticed how naturally the word home slipped from Leah's lips. Not Victor's house, not the mansion, simply home, the place where they all belonged. It was well past 3 in the morning when they finally returned to the mansion. With the first dose of antibiotics and fever reducer in his system, Noah slept more peacefully in Victor's arms. Leah, exhausted by worry and the late hour, struggled to keep her eyes open. Victor carried Noah to his bed, tucking him in carefully. Leah immediately climbed in beside him, determined to keep watch. "You need rest too," Victor said softly. "I can look after him." Leah shook her head stubbornly. "I want to stay close. In case he needs me." Victor considered insisting, but understood her need to maintain some measure of control, to feel useful in protecting her brother. Instead, he brought a spare mattress and laid it beside the bed, adding pillows and blankets. "We can take turns," he offered. "You rest a bit and I'll stay awake. Then we'll switch." To his surprise, Leah agreed, settling onto the makeshift bed. Without much thought, Victor sat beside it, pulling a blanket over her as he had done every night. "Thank you," she murmured, her eyes heavy with sleep, "for not leaving us alone." "Never again," Victor promised, realizing he had never spoken any words with such certainty. When Leah finally fell asleep, Victor remained there between the two children, listening to their breathing in the quiet of the night. One breath slowly evening out with the help of medicine, the other already deep and steady, relieved the crisis had passed. The night of fear confirmed what all the little moments of the past months had built. They were no longer 3 individuals under the same roof. They were a family, united not by blood or paperwork, but by daily choices, fulfilled promises, and hands that held each other tightly in the dark. Dawn arrived with a clear sky, a golden September light filtering through the windows of the Hale mansion. Victor woke before his alarm, double-checking that everything was ready. The uniform ironed and hanging by the closet door, the brand-new backpack neatly packed with supplies, the special lunch he had prepared the night before. In the kitchen, he made coffee while reviewing the final documents. There weren't many pages, but they carried enormous weight. Each line represented not just legal obligations, but heartfelt promises he had been keeping for months. The lawyer had explained everything in detail the previous week. Exhaustive searches for Helena Suarez had turned up nothing. No record in any hospital database, no contact with social services, like she had vanished. Presumed abandonment, the lawyer had said. The judge granted provisional custody. Today, we finalized the adoption. Victor put the documents away when he heard footsteps on the stairs. Leah appeared in the kitchen doorway, wearing the navy blue dress they had picked out for this special day. Her hair, now longer and healthier, was braided neatly. "Good morning," she said, her eyes darting to the folder on the table. "Did you sleep well?" Victor asked, pouring her a glass of juice. Leah nodded, sitting down. "Noah's still asleep. Let him rest a bit longer, we have time." They shared breakfast in a comfortable silence, a ritual that had formed naturally over the months. Victor noticed Leah's hands trembling slightly around her cup. "Are you nervous?" he asked gently. Leah shrugged, A gesture he had learned was her silent yes when words were hard to find. "What if it doesn't work out?" she finally voiced. "Not the paperwork, afterwards. What if it's not like we hope?" Victor understood. It wasn't the legal procedure she feared, but the permanent commitment it represented. "Nothing will change," he reassured her. "It just confirms what we already are." After breakfast, Victor grabbed his car keys. "I need to go somewhere first. Sophia will be here soon to stay with you until I get back." Leah nodded, understanding without needing an explanation. The cemetery was peaceful at that hour. Victor walked the familiar path among the headstones, carrying a small bouquet of white lilies. He knelt at the polished stone bearing Eliza and Olivia's names. "Hello, my loves," he said quietly. "Today's an important day." A gentle breeze rustled the nearby trees. "I'm signing the adoption papers," he went on. "Leah and Noah. You would have liked them. Leah has your strength, Eliza. And Noah has that curiosity that lit up Olivia's eyes." He traced the engraved names with his fingertips, a gesture he had repeated countless times over the years. "I haven't left you behind," he said, his voice cracking a bit. "I just moved forward with them." He stayed for a few more minutes, then rose and touched the gravestone one last time before leaving. When he got back to the mansion, everyone was ready. Noah ran up to him, proudly showing off his little bow tie. "Do I look good?" he asked, spinning around in his outfit. "Very handsome," Victor affirmed, picking him up. Leah approached quietly. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, once Sophia had taken Noah to grab his jacket. Victor smiled, genuinely touched. "Yes, I'm very good." The courthouse was an older building in the city center. The ceremony was surprisingly brief. The official explained the documents, the rights and responsibilities, the legal aspects of adoption. When it came time to sign, Noah had already fallen asleep in Victor's arms, overcome by boredom and childlike drowsiness. Victor shifted the boy into his left arm, keeping him secure as he signed each document with his right. Beside him, Leah watched every move, her eyes following the pen. When he reached the final paper, the official adoption certificate, she silently reached out and held his hand for just a moment before the last signature. It wasn't dramatic. There were no grand speeches, just a small hand holding another, a moment of connection before the legal act that would formalize what their hearts already knew. Victor completed his signature, the ink marking the paper with more than just his name. It carried a promise, a commitment, a final choice. "Congratulations, Mr. Hale," the official said, stamping the final document. "The adoption is finalized." Leaving the courthouse under the bright morning sun, Victor carried the sleeping Noah in one arm, while his other hand held Leah's. Sophia followed a few steps behind, safely carrying the signed papers in her bag, giving them space. None of the three said the word family. They didn't need to. It was written in the documents they had just signed, in the way Noah nestled into Victor's shoulder, in how Leah walked beside him with lighter steps. It was inscribed in the future unfolding before them, a future that did not erase the past, but built upon it, transforming grief into love, solitude into connection, and empty houses into homes. It was a signature more profound than ink on paper. It was a signature of love. Dawn broke with the kind of anticipation that makes the air feel lighter, almost electric. Victor woke before his alarm, triple-checking that everything was in place. The neatly pressed uniform hanging by the closet, the brand-new backpack with everything organized, and the special lunch he'd prepared the night before. In the kitchen, he prepared a more elaborate breakfast than usual, pancakes shaped like letters, a specialty he had mastered over the months. The sweet smell soon drew Noah, who appeared with rumpled pajamas and messy hair. "Today's the day," he exclaimed, climbing onto the stool to watch the stove. "Can I walk Leah to school too?" "Of course," Victor replied, ruffling the boy's hair affectionately. "We're her support team today." Light footsteps sounded on the stairs. When Leah entered the kitchen, Victor felt an unexpected surge of emotion. There she stood, dressed in her full school uniform, a pleated navy skirt, white shirt, knee-high socks. The school's emblem shone on her chest, carefully sewn on the night before by Sophia. "Morning," she greeted, her voice softer than usual. Her hands fiddled nervously with the collar of her shirt, a gesture betraying her anxiety. "You look wonderful," Victor said simply. A small smile appeared on Leah's face, briefly lighting her eyes before giving way to the worried expression again. "What if I can't keep up?" she asked during breakfast, poking at her pancake. "I've never been to school before. The other kids know so much more than me." It was true. Despite the private tutors working with her these past months, Leah had significant gaps in formal education. The decision to place her directly in 3rd grade, with children her age rather than a lower grade E, had been thoroughly discussed with educators and psychologists. "Remember what Dr. Martinez said," Victor replied gently. "The most important thing isn't what you already know, but what you're ready to learn. And you're more than ready." Leah nodded, not entirely convinced, but willing to trust him. Over the months, she had learned that not all adults fail. Some promises are kept, some hands remain extended. After breakfast, Victor helped Noah get dressed while Leah triple-checked her backpack, going through each item meticulously. New notebooks, freshly sharpened pencils, soft erasers, and the colorful pencil case she had chosen herself at the store. When Sophia arrived to accompany them, she brought a small surprise, a silver star hair clip for Leah. "So you'll shine on your big day," she said, fastening it into Leah's carefully braided hair. On the drive to school, in the back seat, Noah held Leah's hand and spun fantastic tales about the day ahead. In his vivid imagination, Leah would instantly become the most popular student, discover hidden treasure on the playground, and be invited to join a secret club of adventurers. His stories teased small smiles out of Leah, visibly easing her tension. Victor watched in the rearview mirror, struck once again by the dynamic that had grown between the siblings, Noah as the eternal optimist, shining light on Leah's anxieties, and Leah as the vigilant protector, gradually learning to be protected too, Saint. Francis Elementary occupied an entire block, with its main red brick building and sprawling green yards. By the time Victor parked out front, a steady flow of uniformed children and hurried parents was already streaming in. Leah gazed out the window, her eyes wide. "There are so many people," she whispered. "And they're all just as nervous as you on the first day," Sophia reassured her, adjusting the collar of Leah's shirt one last time. Victor got out and opened the door for her. Noah unbuckled himself quickly, determined to be part of this milestone. Together, the four walked toward the main gate, where a teacher greeted new students with a warm smile. Victor felt Leah's grip on his hand tighten with each step. At the point where parents had to say goodbye, a few yards from the inner gate, Leah stopped. Her small shoulders suddenly seemed weighed down, and she looked up at Victor with a vulnerability he had rarely seen since her early days there. "I'm scared," she admitted softly. Then, after a short pause, "But I'm also happy." Those simple words perfectly summed up what they had all experienced these past months, a delicate balance between fear of the unknown and the joy of new possibilities, between the shadow of the past and the light of the future. Victor knelt to her eye level, straightening her backpack and checking the star hair clip. "Hair's going to be all right," he promised, holding her small hands in his. "You deserve this." And she did. After everything Leah had faced, loss, abandonment, premature responsibility, she deserved this chance. Deserved to be just a child, with all the joys and challenges that entails. Noah squeezed in between them, hugging his sister tight. "It's going to be the best day ever," he proclaimed with absolute conviction. "And I'm making a drawing for you to show everyone when you come home." Leah hugged him back, then straightened, adjusting her backpack with renewed determination. Her chin lifted slightly, that gesture of courage Victor had learned to recognize and admire. "See you later," she said, a slight tremor still in her voice but overpowered by resolve. "I'll be right here waiting," Victor promised, "in this exact spot." With one final wave, Leah turned and walked toward the gate. The teacher greeted her warmly, introducing her to another girl who looked just as nervous. From a distance, Victor watched them exchange timid words before heading inside together. Next to him, Sophia discreetly raised her camera, capturing the moment Leah stepped through the threshold, small but determined, full of newly allowed dreams, her silhouette framed by the school entrance. "She'll be fine," Sophia said, putting the camera away. "She's stronger than she knows." "All of us are," Victor replied, feeling Noah's hand tighten around his as he waved enthusiastically after his sister, now vanished inside the building. The ride home was quieter. Noah eventually dozed in the back seat, worn out by the morning's excitement. Sophia alternated between checking her work emails and flipping through the photos she had taken. "This one's perfect," she commented, showing Victor a shot at a red light. It captured Leah in the exact moment she glanced back one last time before entering, one foot over the threshold, the other still in familiar territory, her face a blend of determination and hope. "I'm framing that," Victor decided immediately. Over the following weeks, a new rhythm took shape. To her own surprise, Leah adapted well to the school environment. Her natural intelligence and thirst for knowledge made up for the academic gaps. The teachers sent positive reports, noting her exceptional focus and determination. More importantly, she began making friends, classmates who invited her to join them at recess, who sat with her at lunch, who shared secrets and laughter. A month after school started, on the day Leah brought home her first test marked with a big red A, Sophia arrived for dinner with a carefully wrapped package. "A little gift to celebrate," she explained, handing it to Victor. Inside was a beautifully framed picture, not just of Leah on her first day, but a small collage, Leah in her uniform, Noah holding the special drawing he'd promised to make, and Victor in the middle with an arm around each of them, all smiling, all connected by something more profound than physical closeness. At the bottom of the frame, a small brass plate bore a simple yet powerful inscription, "Our New Life." Victor felt tears welling up as he placed the frame on the living room wall, where it would be the first thing they saw upon entering, and the last thing before leaving. A constant reminder not just of how far they had come, but of everything still ahead. Because this wasn't a story about salvation. It was a story about staying, about teaching, about starting over. A plate of food, a name painstakingly written, a genuine hug, and a photo in which no one was missing. It wasn't a happy ending, because it wasn't an ending at all. It was just the beginning of a new story, their story together, a story of learning to live again. Her story where even the deepest wounds could coexist with hope and everyday triumphs. A story forged in the simplest moments, a bedtime routine, a shared laugh, a hand extended in the darkness. And so, their new life began, quietly weaving the threads of past sorrow and present joy into a tapestry of resilience. One day, one meal, one promise at a time, becoming at last a family in every sense of the word.